Live from the Pix11 Social Media Center, she's got more than 30 years on the streets as an investigative reporter. Now, Pix11's Mary Murphy takes you deep into the world of cold cases, terrorism, America's drug crisis, and more. These are the Mary Murphy Files.
Good evening and welcome to the Mary Murphy Files on Pix11 Facebook Live. As we all try to get through this Arctic blast that we're having, we're lucky to be inside this evening. And I'm joined by Dr. Nicole Van Nortwick, who's one of the directors of the Motherhood Center of New York. And I'm so grateful you came in this evening because we're going to have a very important discussion about the distinction between postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis. And there's a reason that I made that the subject of this show tonight. We had a recent case. We have some footage that shows a mom that was recently sentenced to 3 1/3 to 10 years in prison. Her name is Tanisha Fearon. And back in 2015, she was arrested, accused of dropping her 6-month-old baby daughter out a window. She had 2 or 3 other children in the apartment in the Bronx. She's just gone up to Bedford Hills Correctional to be processed. There were other mothers that same year within a 3-month period that had killed their children. And it was very alarming to us, and a lot of people have very strong views about this. Some say they belong in jail for a long time. Others say really they need treatment in a mental hospital. And people need to understand more about postpartum psychosis. Tanisha Fearon, we were told, was chanting about God and Satan and the devil when she tossed her baby out the window. So what do we need to understand about this?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to understand that postpartum psychosis is an illness, and it's a medical condition, and it's very rare. It happens about maybe 1 to 3 women will suffer from it in about 1,000 births.
Out of 1,000 births.
Yeah, that's a small percentage. It's rare. It's different from what we consider postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, which you might see more around 15 to 20% of women experience.
I had read a statistic that maybe about 3 million women in the United States suffer from this kind of depression or postpartum anxiety, as you say, every
anxiety
year.
or depression.
And it's very hard to deal with.
It's very hard to deal with, and I think what happens is, I think with postpartum psychosis, which is when there's a real break in reality, it's an illness of the brain.
You're hallucinating often.
You're hallucinating, you're having delusions, you're often paranoid or suspicious, there can be a detachment from the children, and there's this thing that can happen where one day you seem okay and the next day you're not, and it can go from moment to moment. You know, we call that in psychiatry waxing and waning, but it can be very confusing because it can seem like the mother just seemed okay and then she wasn't. It's like she snapped, and that's what can happen with postpartum psychosis.
I want to give an example because part of the reason I found out about the Motherhood Center is in doing research, I found out about Teresa Toomey, who was a lawyer from Connecticut, and she had a baby some years ago, and she had a break with reality and did not want to talk about it at first. She was lucky with the outcome, but she started hallucinating, and she finally gave a talk about what happened to her, and we have a little bit of this talk to show you.
I saw myself take a scissors and plunge it into her and cut her open from here to here. And there's blood everywhere. I turned away. I said, this has just got to be a bad thought. I went back to my room, and as I crossed the threshold, I saw her there on the bed, cut open, with blood everywhere. And I thought that I had killed her. But eventually, I realized that she was just laying there on the bed, peacefully sleeping. It had just been a hallucination.
Her baby was not harmed, but she hallucinated that the baby had been.
Right. So often with hallucinations, you're seeing things or hearing things that aren't there. And this is when your mind is almost playing tricks on you in a kind of way. And this is part of the illness. And I think in terms of when you get more paranoid or more suspicious, it can be very hard for a mother to really reach out and ask for help. And it can be hard for the people around the mother who think, okay, maybe she just needs a little sleep. Maybe she is struggling with becoming a new mom and in this transition period. And what happens is we don't have enough education, I think, for parents, for family members, community members. You know, these are mothers who love their children dearly and are struggling and don't know how to ask for help and worry that if they do ask for help, that they're going to have their babies taken away or that they're going to go to jail when it's really, truly a medical condition. The brain is not well.
And oftentimes needs treatment.
Needs treatment,
medication.
needs medication. We consider postpartum psychosis a psychiatric emergency. We think you should get to the emergency room and call 911 as soon as possible.
All right, we have a case I want to make reference to. It involved a school teacher in Carroll Gardens, Brooklyn, very well regarded by the other teachers and the parents. Lisette Bamenga, she actually threatened and then carried this out. She gave her children windshield wiper fluid and then drowned them. A little boy, 4 years old, and her daughter was only 4 months old. And this case took a while to go through the system, but it was a non-jury trial. The judge convicted her of manslaughter and gave her 8 years in prison. She is eligible for some kind of parole or release this year, so we'll have to see what happens. But it was interesting how the teachers and the parents and the school supported her.
Yeah.
You don't always find that, even on Facebook when people write in the comments section.
Right. And I think a testament to this teacher in regards to the community is they knew this woman to be a loving, caring, professional woman who had a lot of esteem. And it seemed like after the postpartum episode that things sort of broke for her. Like she had a real break in reality, and people want to sort of say, well, she was upset. Why didn't she get the help that she needed? How come people don't understand this more? And I think it's a real issue in terms of prevention and trying to get people to understand what's going on.
Some people don't understand. We have some people posting saying, you know, I didn't get sleep, I didn't get much help, but I didn't kill my children. So a lot of the public still does not understand this. And, you know, one of the most famous cases dates back to 2001. Andrea Yates, she had 5 children. The youngest was only 6 months old.
Right.
That was Mary. Those are the 4 boys with her and her former husband. That's Mary. And she had a terrible break with reality and killed all 5 children.
Right.
But there were warning signs,
There were warning
at least for
signs.
2 years after the birth of one of the earlier sons.
Right.
And she had, I believe, been hospitalized and treated.
Hospitalized,
And I don't think anyone realized the severity of what was going to happen. She was convicted of murder, then it was overturned, and then the second trial resulted in a jury saying she was not guilty by reason of insanity. And to this day, she remains in a mental hospital.
Right. Right.
Your thoughts on her case and if it helped us to understand a little bit more?
Well, I think that you need ongoing medical attention and psychiatric medical attention, and I think this is a woman who, when neighbors are peeking into your window and sort of seeing you paranoid and believing that there's cameras around, right, and you're not getting the kind of medical attention that you need, I think that you're ill. Right? You're having a psychiatric emergency, and this is a woman who had delusions and beliefs that by killing her children, she would be saving them from Satan. So because of that break in reality, and because she didn't have the judgment that the rest of us have in those moments because she was unwell and she was sick, you're resulting in an episode where, you know, we could have maybe saved a number of lives, but we didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah, I'm going to read a couple of comments. Gigi Ellis is the one who said that I have 3 kids. It gets overwhelming, but not to the point of killing them. I just cried a lot. Sharon Alexander, no excuse. People are different to the public than they are at home. It was interesting in the Lisette Bamenga case. We have her photo. We just showed it a little while ago. What the prosecutor said in that case is that she was actually enraged because her husband had had a baby with another woman. And this was her way of retaliating, that it was revenge. Mm-hmm. So the prosecution was not backing down from that belief. Right. So I guess some of the people who are posting are saying they can't understand how you would go to that level.
Well, you know, I think it is hard to understand unless you have an experience with someone who has been psychotic. when you're delusional and having hallucinations, and sometimes it makes sense within the storyline and the narrative. She must be so upset that she killed her children. But these are not often women who want to harm their children at all. These are people that are in a different reality than the ones that we're experiencing right now, that don't have the kind of judgment that we have.
There's a woman who just wrote, Jackie Rodriguez. She said, my daughter is going through this. We have been getting help for 2 months and she's still not better. How can we get help if the medicine is not working?
I think it's important to have medication. I think to have ongoing treatment, and Postpartum Support International is a great resource. They have warm lines which you can call and text. NYC Well is a wonderful resource as well in terms of a crisis hotline. At their motherhood center, we're often fielding calls with people just like this woman who are sort of saying, help, I don't know what else to do. We often get calls from partners, family members, nannies who are sort of saying, these moms aren't feeling so good, what can we do? And if we can't help them, we try to point them in the right direction.
Jackie Suarez brought up something that you kind of made reference to. There is help, but here in New York City, ACS would get involved and put the mother on a neglect charge. So there's that fear.
I think there is that fear. And, in terms of getting help for moms who are ill, I mean, first we have to see this as a mental health condition. And we're not wanting to persecute these moms. And I think sort of wanting to send these moms to jail rather than mental institutions and psychiatric assistance is where we've gone awry. I don't think we understand this as a nation. And I think we've actually failed a lot of our mothers by not understanding what happens in this perinatal period.
Postpartum period.
Yeah,
And
it's pregnancy, and pregnancy, it's a gradual shift from hormones for 9 months going up. Within 48 hours, those hormones come crashing down. That changes the brain chemistry. Add a baby, add no sleep, right? So what's going on in this period for moms? You can have a break, and if you have any predispositions, if you've had bipolar or depression in the past, it can make things much worse in that period.
And we had a very famous woman write a book about postpartum depression, Brooke Shields. It was called Down Came the Rain, My Journey Through Postpartum Depression. And I believe she wrote in the book at one point she was just driving and she had just had her daughter, Frances Rowan, or Rowan Francis is the correct name. And she had thought of driving into a wall. She was beside herself.
Yeah, you feel helpless, you feel suicidal, you don't know what to do. It's a loving thing to sort of not want to hurt your children or yourself, but you feel so hopeless and so helpless. These are signs and symptoms: depression, disconnection from the baby, feeling sad and weepy and tearful, irritability, shifts in appetite, shifts in sleep, not sleeping enough, getting too much sleep. And a lot of moms feel like, I got this. And when you're used to being able to sort of take care of things and you can't, there's a lot of shame involved with that, especially for a mom who wanted a baby for a long time and worked hard to get that baby. And then to feel like you don't got this, it's humiliating.
Yeah, and I believe now that there's some talk that all women should get postpartum screening after having a baby.
Absolutely. I think we need to do a lot more education and the screenings. I think we have to do more check-ins more regularly, not just at the postpartum visit with the mom at the OBGYN, but pediatricians, internists. Other people need to get involved in sort of doing more checks.
Can you give any advice to husbands or parents of new moms or siblings? What can they do to get a mother through the postpartum blues?
Well, I think check in, ask how they're doing, watch for things that are different, out of character for these moms. People want to chalk it up to not enough sleep. It's more than that. Offer support. And I think if you're really worried, look up and educate yourself. Go to Postpartum Support International, look at the Motherhood Center, drop into some of these support groups, get involved. The community needs to get involved more. You see a neighbor who's got a baby and you haven't seen her coming out of the house, go check on her. We used to have the kind of community where family members and neighbors used to be more involved, but it's a different community now.
I have to say that I have one child. He's going to be 23 years old this week, Anthony. And when I had him, I'm lucky I didn't have postpartum depression, but I did feel very isolated because I had him during a huge snowstorm. There was so much snow, no one could really visit. My husband was working a lot of hours, and my major part of socialization for the first 2 months was when the postal carrier came every
Yeah.
day, or a UPS truck showed up with a gift.
Right.
And that was the highlight of my day.
Right, and when you're on your own, and it's different. A lot of I think some of the people shooting some text right now or messaging are talking about, well, I got through it. Okay, that's fine, but there's a lot of people who can't get through it. There's that percentage of people, 15 to 20%, who are really experiencing severe mental illness and need the help and need the treatment, and that could save lives.
So I hope that some of the people that may be suffering will reach out to some of the hotlines you mentioned one last time. Can you give the hotlines?
So Postpartum Support International, they have a website and you can call them, and we have NYC Well in New York City is a crisis hotline. I think that's good for anybody, not just our postpartum family members. And the Motherhood Center is happy to field some calls and has a lot of resources on their website as well.
Thank you, Dr. Nicole Van Nortwick, for coming out in the cold today and joining us. We really appreciate all the knowledge that you shared, and we wish you well in your work. And we thank the viewers for joining us this evening, and hope you'll be back next week for the Mary Murphy Files. Good night.